Welcome. Man, this is the first summer service we've ever had here, and not in like the interfaith room. So it's kind of like, whoa, what's going on? So first off, I'm just going to pray for us and kind of get us started today, all right? Heavenly Father, I just pray, God, that you get me out of the way, that you would be glorified, that you would speak today, God, that you would be, God, just our great shepherd, God, lead us. Help us to look at your word today. Help us to understand it. Help us to see the beauty of who you are and the beauty of the heart that you have given David, God. And I pray that we would have that heart. I pray that you lead us, Lord. Amen. All right, so welcome to summer. It's kind of weird because it's not summer yet, technically. I always consider summer to be like after Memorial Day, but I mean it technically kind of is summer. And happy Mother's Day. So can we give our So I love, this season is kind of a season for, especially May and June in particular, is the season for graduations and weddings. Has anybody looked at their Facebook feed and you see about everything is either a graduation or prom? Or babies. But anyways, like, so you have these big events that are kind of happening in people's lives. Some of you graduated last week. I had a chance to go to Matt and Audrey's wedding yesterday, which was awesome, and there's a couple of awesome weddings happening this summer. But we all have these kind of big events are happening, and it's kind of like these defining moments in your life. Like we all have these defining moments in our life, where our life is kind of going in one direction, and then we have this moment, and it kind of sends our life in a different trajectory. Like our life is never the same after this moment. And for me, I think probably the biggest defining moments in my life have all come during the summer. That's when I kind of reconnected with Felicia and started dating. We got married in this period. We're celebrating our anniversary next weekend. And also, for me, one of the biggest moments of my life happened during the summer. It was summer '05, and it was during a men's small group. And it was probably one of the best small groups that I've ever been a part of. And for your information, we're starting small groups this week, and they're going to be awesome. And maybe this could be, this summer will be an opportunity where you have one of those defining moments. But for me, I was basically kind of on this path of like, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm kind of pursuing the typical American dream where I'm going to be a doctor, I'll have the 2.5 kids, a nice house, the white picket fence, the perfect wife. I'll have all this kind of set up for him. That was where I was going in my life. And it was at this Bible study where one of the guys, the leader of the study, was basically like, kind of talking about the American dream. This is actually what God's part is. Is this what God's part is for us? And it's the first time in my life that I was like, maybe this isn't what my life should be about. Maybe God has something bigger planned for my life. And it was at that point that was the first point in my life where I started realizing that maybe I'm going to be a pastor. Maybe that's what God has for me. So for this summer, I want you guys, it's very easy to kind of put cruise control on and like take relax, and you should relax, and it is kind of like more of a chill time here at New Life, but this summer could be a summer that could change everything. This summer could be a summer where literally like your direction changes. So we are starting this new sermon series called Braveheart, and we're going to be going through Braveheart over the next 6 weeks. Basically, Braveheart, we're going to be looking at the heart of David. We're going to be exploring those defining moments in David's life, and basically kind of unpacking them. That's for you, Ed. And basically, like kind of looking at them and saying, what happened? How did David react? And kind of what was his part? We're going to look at David both as a warrior, and we're going to go through like 1 Samuel, and then we're also going to look at him as a poet. And we're going to go through Psalms. So we're going to kind of connect those two at the same time. And I think we have a lot to learn from David. And I think all of us here, I think just because you are here at Ohio State, I think that kind of indicates that you want your life to matter. Like you want to make a difference. I think all of us want our lives to matter. All of us want to make a difference. All of us somehow want to, by the end of our lives, for people to say, yeah, this person's lived a great life. I think all of us want to make an impact in the world. And I think if you look at David, here's a guy who made a huge impact. Here's the guy who's the first king in the line that leads to Jesus. Here's the guy who basically is considered one of the greatest men or one of the greatest people in all of Scripture. So I think we have a lot to learn from his life. And this summer we're going to be really answering the question, if we're going to look at David's life, what from David's life can we learn about what does it mean to be great? What does it mean to live a life that matters? So these are kind of the questions, the overarching questions that we are going to be kind of digging into over the next couple weeks. So, if you guys want to flip with me to 1 Samuel 16. In 1 Samuel 16, verse 1, it goes, "The Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." But Samuel said, "How can I go? Saul will hear about it and kill me." The Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate." Samuel did what the Lord said. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him, and they asked, "Do you come in peace?" Samuel replied, "Yes, in peace I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me." Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." All right. So let's kind of look at the context of what's going on here. The Israelites were kind of they were in the wilderness with Moses. They come into the promised land. They get the promised land. There's a bunch of judges that are kind of leading the promised land. Then they look at everybody else and they say, "We want a king." God's like, "I don't want you to have a king." They're like, "We really want a king." So then God's like, "All right, well, I'm going to give you a king." So then he gives them King Saul. King Saul is this tall dude, probably attractive guy. He looks like a king. He stands taller than everybody else, and everyone's like, "That guy looks like a king, so that's our king." So Saul is basically made king, but God is telling Saul, he's like, "I want you to do this specific thing in a certain way." Well, Saul doesn't obey that, kind of does his own thing, and then God's like, "It mourns me. I'm saddened that I made this guy king, so I actually want a different king." So here you have Samuel. Samuel is the guy who kind of anointed Saul as the king, and now Samuel is going to Jesse, the house of Jesse, which is part of the tribe of Judah, and basically saying, "Hey, one of your sons, go to Jesse because one of his sons is going to be king." So here Samuel is going to Jesse. Jesse is basically like, "Well, here are my sons." Kind of they're parading by and being like, "Here's my sons, one by one." And God's like, "No, that's not the guy. And just because he's tall, just because he kind of looks like Saul, because he resembles Saul, because he looks kind of more like a king, that's not my guy." And they kind of are parading back and forth, and God is saying, it's not about your outside appearance, but it's about what is in the heart. And I think, don't we all do this? Don't we all kind of have this, even from birth, not from birth, but even from childhood, I think we all do this. I think we all look at the outside rather than the inside. Have you ever heard the term, "Don't judge a book by its cover"? That term is there because we judge books by its cover. It's just natural for us. We're constantly processing everything. I think even when you're in elementary school, if you're playing dodgeball or baseball or soccer or basketball, whatever, if you're the picker, you're always thinking to yourself, I'm trying to look for the tallest person or the fastest person or the most athletic person or the strongest person. I want that person on my team. You're looking at that person, you're like, who do I want on my team? I don't know if you guys were ever in that place, or if you guys were like, oh no, I'm going to pick last. Like, this is the worst feeling of all time. I think we've all been there. But this week, some of you are sports fans, some of you follow the NFL. This week was the NFL draft. Ladies, I'll have a point about lady stuff in a second, but there's. I'm sorry. But I mean, come on. I asked my wife, and she's like, what are you talking about? But anyways, the NFL draft. Basically they've spent the last 4 to 5 months talking about who's going to be the number 1 pick. And they have this thing called the combine, and the combine is basically all the prospective, athletes come in and they're running and they're jumping and they're doing all this stuff, and they're basically trying to find, what they really are trying to find is a freak athlete. And that's what they talk about they talk about, clowning for about 4 months, because they're like, this guy's the freak athlete. He's so fast. He's like the fastest guy we've ever seen. He's like strong. They're looking just for that freak athlete that's like above and beyond. Like just crazy. But the question is, how many times do those guys actually pan out? How many times do those guys actually fly? How many of those guys are actually successful? I think of an example of someone like Drew Brees. Do you guys know who Drew Brees is? Some of the ladies know, some of the guys yes. But Drew Brees, if only Jimmy was here, Jimmy would be like, oh, this is it, man, he's finally talking about the Saints, this is my team. But Jimmy isn't here. But basically, Drew Brees, here's this guy, he came out, he was this fantastic college quarterback. But when it came to the draft, they looked at him and he was like a smaller guy. When it comes to a quarterback, you're supposed to be tall. He's probably like more my height and more my size. And they're like, this guy's too small. And this guy really isn't that fast. And this guy really doesn't have a strong arm. So there's nothing about him that makes him physically extraordinary. And so when the draft came around, he just fell. Like he fell in the draft. And people didn't pick him up. And then here's a guy who now, that's like almost 10 years ago, and here's a guy who's like one of the most successful quarterbacks of all time. He leads his team to a Super Bowl, they win, and he's the MVP. He's like one of the best players in the league. He's one of the most highly paid players in the league. And here's this guy who's not a freak athlete by any means, but the reason that he is successful is because of his heart. Because people see his heart. He gets people motivated. He's a leader. He leads because of his heart, not because of his incredible talent. And I think we can do this in church as well. I've done this. I remember a couple years back, there was a guy who came in, and I was like, I went to Ed, I'm like, Ed, this guy could be the leader. Like, this guy could be the guy. He's a good-looking guy. He's very sociable. He's very articulate. He's smart. Like, he has a Bible college education. I'm like, this guy can be the guy. And Ed went to him and just started talking just for about 15 minutes. He comes back to me and he's like, he doesn't have a heart. Like, he doesn't have a heart. He has all the skill set, but he doesn't have a heart. So if we continue in the passage in verse 8, then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, the Lord has not chosen this one either. Jesse then had Shammah pass by, and Samuel said, nor has the Lord chosen this one. Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to him, the Lord has not chosen these. So he asked Jesse, are these all the sons you have? There is still the youngest, Jesse answered, but he is tending the sheep. Samuel said, send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives. So he sent and had him brought in. He was ruddy with a fine appearance and handsome features. The Lord said, rise and anoint him. He is the one. So Samuel took a horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David and here we are, we have kind of all these brothers who are passing by. Now, does this remind you of like Cinderella? Does anybody else, did that connect with them? Alicia Hatch's like, man, this is really like Cinderella. Like you have all these guys who are passing by, and they're like, no, this isn't the guy. Just like Cinderella, like all her sisters are running by, and they're like all dressed up. You know, the shoe doesn't fit. And then they're like, is there anybody else here that could actually like try on the shoe? And it's like, well, yeah, you know, Cinderella's off doing it, like she's serving, off working. And it's the same thing here where all the brothers pass by, and then Samuel's like, is there another guy? And they're like, oh yeah, you got David, he's the youngest, he's kind of like tending the sheep, he's like way out here, do you want us to call him in? Like he's just kind of like doing his own thing, and all these guys are passing by him. And so he goes, and David is brought in, and Samuel says he's ruddy. Has anybody like looked at that term, like read this and been like, what does ruddy mean? It means, I looked at the definition, it means kind of to be like red-faced, or to be healthy. You know, when I think of David, I think of a guy who probably isn't like really, really tall, probably is kind of more like a boy, probably my size. This is conjecture. But I kind of think of like Aaron Kraft. Like, he's got the red cheeks, you know, Aaron Kraft's a little bit ruddy. You know, like he's not super tall, not super strong, but just, and even with Aaron Kraft, he's not a physical specimen, but he has a great heart. And so he goes and looks at this Aaron Kraft like David here, and Samuel's like, this is the guy. This is the guy. And when he looks at David, he sees his heart. And that is what matters, and that's the first point, is that what matters is not what you can do, as in your talents or abilities, but who you are, as in your heart. That our heart always trumps our abilities. Now, I'm not saying that abilities aren't necessary. I'm not poo-pooing your gifts and talents and saying, hey, you shouldn't use those, because I think you should. God has given you your abilities and your talents and your passions, and He wants you to use those and leverage those. But at the end of the day, the thing that matters more than all those things, because you will use those things are necessary, but the thing that matters more than anything else is your heart. That your heart is always greater than your abilities. That I would rather have someone who is passionate about the name of Christ than someone who has the greatest skill set. And that's basically what God is saying in this passage. He's saying, I'm not looking at the outward appearance, at what you can do, but I'm looking at the inward. I'm looking at your heart. And he says that David is a man after his own heart. So the question for us is, what is it about his heart that God was pleased with? What was it about David's heart that God was pleased with? If we kind of jump forward in this passage, it's in 17:15, and you guys don't have to flip there, you don't have to page over. But basically, where we find David months after this is David is back with his sheep. And he was out there tending the sheep. He's anointed as king. And you'd think, I don't know about you guys, but I would be like, you know, I want to be king. I just got anointed as king. So I'm the guy now. So I should, you know, like, I want the throne. I don't know if you guys are thinking the same thing, but I'm like, I would expect David to be like, yeah, like, it's about me now. Like, it's about my fame. It's, you know, I want the throne. It's about, I want some riches. But where do we find David? The anointed king. We find him back with his sheep. What a glorious position he's in. Here's the king tending the sheep. The reason why is because David's heart is for the sheep. Like, he is utterly obsessed with his sheep. He can't leave them. Like, that is his heart. And I think that is the heart that God wants for us. He wants us to have a heart that is obsessed for the sheep. A heart that is a heart of a shepherd. So the question for us is, what is it about the heart of a shepherd that leads to greatness? What is it about the heart of a shepherd that leads to greatness? So we're going to be kind of looking at just three aspects of what it looks like to have a heart of a shepherd. And in your bulletin, the first two verses are actually inverted. We're going to be in Luke 15 first. So if you want to flip with me to Luke 15. 17, verse 1. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear him, as in Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Does he not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and he goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep." I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. So a shepherd seeks after those who are lost. He searches the ends of the earth in order to find those who are lost. He's consumed about the lost, that he will leave his 99 sheep in order to go after the one. His heart burns for the one. And not only that, when he finds his sheep, he absolutely rejoices and basically is like, goes around telling all of his friends, like, "I found my sheep, I found my sheep." That what happens with shepherds is that if a sheep goes astray, the shepherd will go and find the sheep, and then it'll break one of its legs. It sounds kind of crazy. It'll break one of its legs, and then it'll put the sheep on its shoulders. And it'll kind of mend the leg and carry the sheep around. And then when the leg is all mended, it'll put the sheep down, and that sheep will cling to its side. Because that sheep senses the scent. That sheep is so close to the shepherd that sheep will never lose. Will never leave the side of the shepherd. That a shepherd goes after the lost, loves the lost, is consumed with the lost. The second one is if we want to flip to John 10 real quick. The second aspect is John 10, verses 2 through 5. The man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them. And his sheep follow him because they know his voice, but they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize the stranger's voice. The shepherd knows his sheep, and they know him. The shepherd knows their name. Like, they know his voice, they know his scent. There's this idea of intimacy, this idea of the shepherd is with his sheep. He spends time with his sheep to the point that he knows when a sheep has gone astray. He knows the names of all of his sheep. There's this idea of intimacy there. The third aspect in John 10, verse 11 is, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep." The third aspect is that the shepherd lays down his life for the flock. The shepherd lays down his life for the flock. Jesus talks about the hired hand here. He talks about how, kind of when things get tough, the hired hand leaves. That the hired hand cares for himself. The hired hand basically, as soon as it costs him something, as soon as his life is put in danger, as soon as there's a risk, he's out of there. That, it's cool when he's getting paid, it's cool when he's getting something out of it, but as soon as there is some loss, he's out of there. It reminds me of this other passage in Ezekiel 34. You don't have to flip there. I'm just going to read it to you real quick. But Ezekiel basically is talking to the shepherds of Israel, and he says, "Woe to the shepherds of Israel who only take care of themselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? You eat the curds, clothe yourselves with the wool, slaughter the choice animals, but you do not take care of the flock. You have not strengthened the weak, or healed the sick, or bound up the injured. You have not brought back the strays, or searched for the lost. You have ruled them harshly and brutally. So they were scattered because there is no shepherd. And when they are scattered, they became food for all the wild animals. My sheep wandered over all the mountains and on every high hill. They were scattered over the whole earth, and no one searched or looked for them. It reminds me of this. Have you guys heard of what kind of happened with like South Korea? Does anybody, with the ferry accident? Did anybody kind of hear about that? So basically what happened is there are these ferries in South Korea that go from the mainland and go to this island. It's about a 13-hour trip. And basically they can put like about 900 people on this ship. But basically what happened is that there's like 450 people, 300 of them were high school students who are going on a field trip. So they're on this ferry, and the captain actually makes a too sharp of a turn, and the cargo shifts, and basically the ship goes and capsizes. So he calls the rescue, and all the rescue people come in, and they're all trapped. The 300 people are trapped, and the captain and the crew get on the first rescue boat. Look at that. The captain and the crew get on the first rescue boat, and they leave the 300 kids trapped inside this ferry, and they eventually drown, and they eventually die. Like, this is an example of a shepherd who is abandoning his flock, who, when it actually might cost him something, he's out of there. The paycheck was great, but I'm not risking my life for these people. And I wonder if this is going to be a defining moment for this guy. A defining moment in a negative way. Like, that's what he's going to be known for. Is he's the captain who abandoned ship. Which you just never do. He's the captain who left 300 people stranded and just got on a boat and he's okay, but they aren't. If you look at the life of David, if you look at the heart of David, in 1 Samuel 17, you guys don't have to flip there, I'll just read it. This is David's heart for the sheep. David says, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it." Does anybody look at that and say, this is unbelievable? One of the sheep goes astray, is lost. David goes flying, running after the sheep. The sheep is in the mouth of a bear or a lion, and he basically goes and somehow rips the sheep from his mouth, and it kind of knocks the bear out. Is on his way, and then that bear and lion are charging at him, and he goes and grabs it by its hair, by its head, and kills it. That is freaking incredible. Seriously, I remember one of my friends, he was like, "Oh man, yeah, if a bear came to me, I'd just put my arm down its throat and choke him." I'm like, "Yeah, right, you're going to go and put your arm down a bear." But here's David actually does that. He is in hand-to-hand combat with a stinking bear, man. That's unbelievable. So, but that is his heart for his flock. That's his heart for the sheep. And this is the second point. True greatness is when we lay down our lives to take care of our flock. That's what true greatness is. David is risking his life for a sheep. He is risking his life to take care of his flock. And that's what is greatness. The greatest stories that are ever told are about people who are risking their lives, about people who are laying down their lives, or about people who are going into danger to help another person, to save another person, to take care of another person. Those are the greatest stories that are being told. And we see this not only in David, but we see this in Christ as well. We see the great shepherd who sees us as lost sheep who are prone to wander, and he goes and runs after those sheep. Then he sees that we are literally in the mouth of death. We're in the mouth of sin, in the mouth of this bear or lion, and rips us out of that. rescues us from that. Then he takes sin by the head, or death by the head, and basically kills it and destroys it. That's who our God is. That's who Christ is. That's who the great shepherd is. That he laid down his life for us, sacrificed his life for us, risked everything for us so that we could be rescued, so that we would be found and not lost, so that we would have life and not death. And that is the type of life that God is calling all of us to. Like, God is calling every single one of us to be shepherds. I don't know if you guys know that, but all of us are called to be shepherds. I know we just finished the school year, but in a couple months, in fall, come August, there's going to be 7,000 new freshmen who are coming onto this campus. And specifically in these two towers, there's going to be around 2,500 to 2,700 students right here. And I know last year we were like, man, we want 25 kids. But this year we, as a staff, and what I am asking all of you to do, and to start doing right now, is to start praying for 50 freshmen to come into our body, but not just come into our body and be like, hey, I'm checking you out, and then I'm out, but to come into our body and be transformed. And have a place where they can belong, and have a place where they can be shepherded into Christ. Have a place where they can find life and nourishment and thrive. That is what I am begging God to do, and that is what I'm asking you guys to do. And the question for us is, will we be shepherds? Will we go after the lost? There's a reason that it's called the freshman herd. It's because literally they are sheep in desperate need of a shepherd. Like, come on to campus and you're like, I don't know where I'm going. Like, I'll just go where the flock is going. And if you know sheep, they will just follow each other, even off of a cliff. They're just following the leader. Like, they will lead each other into death and not life. And we are being called. Christ is calling us to follow him as the shepherd and to go after the lost and be like, no, like, follow me as I'm following Christ as we are going to life. Like, will we be shepherds this next year? Even now in our own lives, like, will we be shepherds? Who are our people? Who are our shepherds? Who are the people that we're looking at and saying, follow me as I'm following Christ? Like, who are those people in our lives? Maybe you're like, well, I'm already doing this. And I'm like, well, great. I'm glad you are. Like, I want every single person to be a shepherd. But maybe you're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if this is me. Like, maybe I need like a new heart. Maybe this isn't my heart. And the question that I think we can all ask is, how do we get this heart? Where does this heart of a shepherd come from? You guys want to flip with me to Psalm 23? That'll be kind of. I know we're doing a lot of flipping. I'm sorry. This will be the last passage that we're in. Psalm 23. David says, "The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." But the last point is that we must recognize that we are sheep in need of a shepherd. We must recognize that we are sheep in need of a shepherd. Not only are we shepherds, but the heart of David is that he recognizes that he is a sheep. He recognizes that God is the shepherd. He recognizes that he's not only leading, but he is being led. And he's basically saying, I'm the sheep, that God is the shepherd. He's saying, you lead, you take me. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me to the waters. You restore my soul. You guide me in paths of righteousness. It's for your name that you are with me. You protect me. You comfort me. You prepare a table for me. You anoint my head. David in this passage is basically saying, God, you are in the driver's seat, and I'm just following. Like you're the one who's leading me as I'm trying to lead this flock. The reality is that we cannot be good shepherds unless we are being led by the great shepherd. Like we cannot be good shepherds unless we are being led by the great shepherd. That we are following his lead. And maybe this means that we don't glory. And that is a possibility. That's kind of what started the situation in the first place. You know, God asked Saul to do something, kind of something very specific, and Saul just kind of did his own thing. And then God takes away the kingdom, and then Saul's response to Samuel is like, well, just make sure that the people honor me. Like, you can take away the kingdom, but just make sure that the people honor me. And I don't know about you guys, but like, I connect with this. I connect with this because, you know, some of you know that I've always wanted to go to New York City. Some of you know that I've always wanted to church plant. And so over the last couple years, like I've always thought, well, maybe I'll just combine both of them and do a church plant in New York City. Like maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. Like I go to New York City and I'm just like, oh, I love this place. Like this is home. This is just, I'm in like a dream world. Like this is, if I could do anything, I would be right there. But what I'm realizing is that, yes, there's a part of my heart that is like, yes, I love New Yorkers and I want to serve them and I want to connect with them. And man, it's like the center of culture for the entire world. So it's like, I want to change that culture and draw people to Christ. But then and maybe this is true of your heart at times, that there's this nastiness in there too. It's like, I want to go there and make a name for myself. Like, I want to go there and be great. Like, I want to be in the lead. Like, I want to go there and be the pastor who is doing things that no one else is doing, that God is blessing in ways that he isn't blessing anybody else. Or go and write great stuff and have people be like, oh man, he's doing stuff that no one else is doing. Going to a place and leaving an imprint. At the end of the day, like, I just want my name to be great. And I'm just realizing that man, like all the best moments in my life, all the most meaningful stories in my life, all point to God and not about myself. You know, none of the most meaningful events in my life are actually about my name, but his name. And I just kind of think, like, you know, when Ed and I were we were at a conference in Washington State just a couple weeks, about a month ago, and basically I just kind of realized, like, God was like, I want you to be here. I don't want you to go to New York. I want you to be here in Columbus. I want you to be present. I want you here indefinitely. And man, there's been so many times when I'm like, I want to go to Columbus, I want to leave Columbus and just do my own thing, and I could. But man, like, following Christ is just so much better than anything else. Because following Christ means that we are being led to life. We're being led to the pasture. We're being led to quiet waters. And when we're kind of doing our own thing, when we kind of choose our own way, we're not going to be led to life. That's just the reality. It's going to show up over here. So, really, the question for us. Is really kind of, where are you at in all of this? You know, where are you? You know, basically, are you excited to be a shepherd? Like, you have a heart of a shepherd. You look at the lost and you're like, I have to go after these people. Like, I have to. Like, who are the sheep in your life? Are you looking at greatness and you're like, this is about, you know, really greatness is about my abilities? Or is it about fostering a heart and nurturing a heart that is going to lead, to follow after God? And really, are we being led by God? Or are we kind of doing our own thing? prayer. I'm going to ask Chris to come up and we'll kind of finish up. So Heavenly Father, God, I just pray that we, God, that we would not only